Hi everyone, welcome back to Cheese and Turtles. My name's Imogen. In today's video, I'm sharing things I've learned from having chronic mental illnesses. I have anxiety and depression, and we'll be talking about both of those in quite some depth, so fair warning for that. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to do that. Give this video a thumbs up, follow me on Instagram, and let's get started. So, I have had anxiety and depression for probably about 10 years now, and I am medicated for my anxiety because I was hospitalized for it following a very severe panic attack about, was it 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago. And that was not a very good experience. I've also been in therapy on and off for the last 5 years, 6 years. Wow, it's 6 years. Anyway, so I'm on therapy, I'm on medication, I've been in therapy, and I've lived with these conditions for a long time. And here's what I've learned, because this is just an insight video. I don't know, I like to talk about mental illness. Mental health is really important to talk about. So the first thing that I've learned is that strong routines are essential. I'm not gonna lie, I sometimes question whether I would be so obsessed with scheduling and routine and productivity if I was a completely mentally stable individual, okay? And you might laugh at that, and you might be like, this is really funny, but genuinely, I think that the fact that I have anxiety and the fact that I have depression has really sort of pushed me towards developing structure in my life and developing purpose in my life. And I'll kind of explain this a little bit more, right? So when you have depression, often your self-esteem is really low. But one way that I found to kind of counteract that was to have tangible achievements that I could point to and say, hey, look, you achieved something, okay? And that would boost my self-esteem. Even though I should inherently have self-esteem, yes, but I don't necessarily because I'm mentally ill, because I have depression, okay? So having those tangible achievements was a way for me to say, hey, look, you should have some self-worth, okay? And the other thing, so for example, like I have really bad anxiety, but I have a strong routine, and that helps me counter the anxiety because I know what I'm going to be doing next, and I know what happens next in the schedule, and that takes some of the uncertainty like out of my life, okay? So you can see how this like productivity as a hobby, productivity as a lifestyle-ish was a way that I have used to cope with my anxiety and depression. And my therapist actually said this to me. She was like, you know, this is actually a really healthy coping mechanism. Like a lot of people, and you know, I have my unhealthy coping mechanisms as well, but she recognized that my sort of fixation on productivity and personal growth was a way for me to channel that sort of nervous energy that I had into something positive and actually turn that around and use it to kind of like mitigate the downsides that come with having chronic mental illnesses. So there's a little interesting bit of meta perspective for you. But strong routines are essential, both for the management of chronic mental illnesses, and also they kind of come from the fact that I have them. So it's kind of like a self-reinforcing cycle. Strong routines are essential. Number 2, therapy saved me. I genuinely do not think I would be here unless I had extensive therapy. And when I say you would not have wanted to meet me before therapy, I just take my word for it, okay? I was all kinds of like messed up, like I still am, but it was so bad. Like I could not function. It was terrible. I was like having panic attacks on a regular basis. I'm talking like daily panic attacks, and I just could not. It was. It's difficult to describe. If you kind of had to be there. It sucked. I do not recommend it. Therapy absolutely saved me, and that's why I recommend it to everyone. And obviously there's a bunch of different kinds of therapy, and not every, like, it's not one size fits all. Sometimes you have to try a few different types of therapy or a few different therapists to find the right one for you. But I am a huge advocate for therapy. Like, I genuinely would not be here without it. So therapy saved me. And that is another thing that I've learned from having chronic mental illnesses. Like, sometimes you just got to talk to a professional because they are the ones who have the training and have the tools to actually help you step outside of your brain. Like, you know, when you're sick, you go to the doctor because the doctor can fix you and make you better, okay? And it's exactly the same for mental illness. Like, if I had a broken leg and I just stayed at home and, I don't know, I put like a stick on my broken leg and I tied it up with like a string, do you think it would heal? Hell no, okay? So I need to go to the hospital and talk to the doctor and be like, can you fix my leg? And then the doctor would be like, yes, because I've trained for 10 years to fix legs, and I've seen a million legs like yours, and I know how to fix this. But it's the same with mental health, and people don't understand this, okay? So therapy is absolutely essential because my therapist was able to take a look at my brain and be like, yep, seen one of those before, let's get you in the clinic, okay? So therapy really, really saved me, and I highly recommend it. Journaling is probably the best coping mechanism I have. Ever since I knew that there was something wrong with my brain, I have wanted to write about it. And also, by extension, talk about it, and maybe that's why I make these videos. But I think journaling is really, really healing, because there have been so many times when I was like stressed, depressed, like whatever it was, and I was just having a terrible mental health day, and I'd write it down, how I was feeling, and I could physically feel those emotions like flowing out of my brain and through the writing onto the paper, and I'd feel so much better afterwards. I can't explain it, but just I think expressing yourself, yeah, it kind of works the same way as therapy. Like, you talk, they listen. A journal, I always felt, was a space where I could express myself without judgment. So journaling's really, really, like, if I had to pick one coping mechanism apart from therapy, the one thing that you can just do by yourself, anyone can do it. All you need is like a bit of paper or like a notebook and a pen. You can even do it in like your notes app on your phone. And I do like both digital and analog journaling. It literally, that is the thing that I recommend. And that is the first, I think that might have been the first coping mechanism that I had for my mental health conditions when I was like a young teenager, because I didn't really have access to like therapy or meds yet. I just had a journal, and I journaled every single day, and I have nearly 30 volumes of journals now. That's how important it was to me. Okay, so I recommend journaling. It's so accessible, and I don't think I would be here without it either. Two other coping mechanisms that I absolutely love are music and nature. So I always say that my favourite band saved my life. They did. Their music is amazing, and I think that if you can find a genre of music or an artist that you really connect with, then they can really kind of like pull you out of some dark places when you get to that point with your mental health. And just being in nature as well. Like, I can't tell you how many times I have been stressing and I'll go outside and I just feel better. I'll give you an example. In my first year at Durham, during exam season, so that was quite a stressful time, because I hadn't done university exams before, and I was like, you know, in this high pressure environment. And there was I don't know if any of you are familiar with Durham, but basically there is a peninsula, and there's a river obviously that runs around the peninsula, and I lived in college on the peninsula, and there was a spot down by one of the boathouses by the river that was maybe a 5-10 minute walk from college, and I used to go and sit there, and I had this little spot that was just like my little space under a tree where I would just go and sit by the river. And every time I finished an exam, like in between my exams, throughout that sort of like first year exam period, I would go down to my spot by the river and I'd sit by the river, and that genuinely, like, it helped me decompress. It really did. Okay, so nature also really important. Another thing that I've learned from having chronic mental illnesses is that it will always be with you, okay? They'll always be with you, but they can get worse and better over time. That's kind of the meaning of chronic, unfortunately, in that I'm aware that I will probably, I don't want to say certainly, because maybe there's going to be some kind of massive medical advance in the future that enables me to be completely cured, and we live in hope, but as far as I'm aware, I will live with anxiety and depression for the rest of my life. And it will always be with me. And coming to terms with that was really difficult to accept, because I don't like being chronically ill. Nobody does, right? And it will always be with you, but it can get worse and better over time, depending in part on your choices. So my mental health is so much better than it used to be. Like, genuinely, day to day, I am so much happier and more stable and able to function as a human being. And some days, I have days where I don't even feel anxious, and it feels like I'm almost normal, okay? And it feels like I am in, remission is the wrong word, but it feels like it's gone away temporarily. And then it comes back, because, you know, it's cyclical and all of that. But it can get worse and better over time depending on your choices, and the more you build in healthy coping mechanisms to your environment, the lighter and lighter your symptoms will be. And that's been something that's given me a lot of hope, because I realised that even though I will live with these conditions for my whole life, unless they miraculously find a cure, I will also be able to make my life better and better and better to the point that the symptoms are so minimal that they barely affect me. And I can have an amazing life despite the fact that I have anxiety and depression, and that really gave me a lot of hope. That made me feel so much better. Another thing that I learned is that being mentally ill is a wonderful filter for meeting friends and dating as well, but friends was the main thing that I was thinking about here. Anyone who can't cope with being your friend will self-select out of your life with remarkable efficiency. And I'm not talking about you should treat your friends like crap and use the fact that you have anxiety as an excuse to like trauma dump on them or whatever. And obviously, you know, it's really important to work on yourself as much as you possibly can. But if someone doesn't want to be around me because I have a chronic mental illness, that's completely valid, okay? And that just means we're not compatible as friends. But in the same way, someone who sees, you know, that I have this condition and that I am actively working on it, and they're like, you know what, that's cool, then that is someone that I want in my life, okay? So I find that, as with any other kind of like downside that I have as a person, and I'm not necessarily saying that being mentally ill is there's no moral value attached to it, but it is something that affects my life in a negative way. And, you know, that can sometimes, unfortunately, and against my will, kind of rub off on the people around me. You know, when I have a bad mental health day, I tend to like withdraw, and that can be difficult to deal with. And obviously I've been working on it, but sometimes, you know, it's a work in progress, right? So I've found that this is a remarkably good filter for, you know, people who are compatible with me in terms of like friendships, dating, whatever, and people who aren't. And the final thing, and I wanted to end the video with this because this is really important, and if you take one thing away from this video, I want it to be this: life is actually incredibly beautiful. Okay, I think because I spent so long being miserable, and because I still have that capacity to sometimes be so incredibly miserable. Like when I go into, unfortunately I haven't had a really bad depressive episode for a while, but the last one I had was pretty rough, and it was not nice. But I think because I spent so long being so miserable and that I know how bad things can get, I experience joy in a very intense way as well. Like, I have talked to a lot of my friends, and some of whom are much more like mentally stable than I am and generally have extremely normal mental health, and don't necessarily have anxiety, don't have depression, whatever. And I'm not saying that obviously people without mental health conditions can't experience joy. Obviously they can, but I think the contrast in terms of my emotional experience is much higher than it is for someone without these conditions. I don't really know how else to explain it, but when your brain makes you feel like you are in a bottomless black pit of misery, and then you don't feel like that one day, and on that day you go and get an ice cream, you are going to appreciate the hell out of that ice cream. You're going to be like, this ice cream is the best thing in the entire fucking world, okay? So I experience joy in a very incredibly vibrant and intense way, and it's almost spiritual at times. Like, I really don't know how to describe it, but when you kind of like come out of that depressive episode or, you know, you feel a sense of like, or the panic attack ends, the calm that washes over me after a panic attack ends is amazing. And obviously I take my meds, so like it's fewer and further between, but I think that because I know how bad things can get, I also appreciate the hell out of anything good. And life is actually incredibly beautiful. And yes, obviously, I wish that I didn't have anxiety, and I wish that I didn't have depression, and I wish that my brain was not like this. But there is a silver lining, and the silver lining is that I have an incredibly heightened sensitivity to the beauty in even the most mundane things in life. And that is something that I feel like it's not worth it, but since I'm here, I appreciate it, okay? You know, so life is actually incredibly beautiful. And I think that I always try and convey how that feels to other people because, like I say, not everyone feels the same way, and it's difficult to describe. But yeah, life is incredibly beautiful, and because of the contrast, I experience joy in such an intense and almost luminous way. like, yeah, it's, again, you kind of had to be there. Alright, these are things that I've learned from having chronic anxiety, chronic depression, being chronically mentally ill. If you are not already subscribed, be sure to do that. Give this video a thumbs up, follow me on Instagram, and I will see you in the next video. Life is absolutely 100% worth living. I will see you guys next time. Okay, bye.